Hey, Dustin, why don't we talk about burnout? Because burnout seems to be something that's pretty common in sales today. And I was thinking you could not create a job that could create more burnout than sales.
Hey, good morning, Brian. Yeah, you're 100% right. I feel like sales by far is probably the highest burnout role out there. And there's a variety of reasons behind that. Commission plan changing all the time, getting rejection, all the ambiguity, the constant changing. But it is by far, I think, one of the biggest stress and burnout roles out there.
That's it. Because if you look at, any other role, imagine if accounting and finance had to do their audit every quarter, right? They got the busy season, the tax season, the audit season, whatever it is. And if they had to do that every quarter, they'd probably go crazy. But yet in sales, we have to do it every quarter, every month, every week, every day. And no one really builds in any kind of release or de-stressors or really chances. Yeah, everyone gets vacation and stuff, but some people take it and they work on their vacation. Is there some things that you've done to prevent burnout?
Yeah, you're right. It just never stops, right? It's like even when you hit your number, it's like, what have you done for me lately type thing. And it's a never ending cycle. But I think that's also what a lot of us like to do as well. So yeah, I mean, over the years, I've hit some pretty big walls. I think when I was climbing the corporate ladder, I had some pretty significant burnout. Working in healthcare and medical device during the pandemic was significant. So I've learned over the years some strategies for me. A few things that stand out the most is I started doing a morning routine about 4 years ago or so. And it's like a simple thing to kind of start the day. And that's helped me significantly. And then doing things like gratitude involved with that. I've always been a big workout person. So I think exercise, movement is a big thing. It doesn't have to be some hardcore, crazy workout, but even walking and things of that nature can be a good takeaway. But those are the two that stand out the most. And then I also think early in my career, definitely in my 20s, I was kind of like burning the candle on both ends, right? Going to trade shows, getting up early, staying out late. It was like a badge of honor that, oh, I can go hang out all night with the customers and then still present the next day. But like getting sleep as well is a huge thing. So I'd say sleep, the morning routine, and exercise is probably the top three for me.
That's it. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't have time for that. It's like, well, you're going to find time one way or another. And, the people that I've seen who really push through it or think it's a sign of weakness, you know, after a long time, you start, they're not living too well right now.
Yeah, it's not definitely not a sign of weakness, and there could be some stigmas with men versus women on some of that stuff. But yeah, what I found is like doing something like the morning routine, although it's not focused on work necessarily, it helped me not only with work but other areas of my life. And then what ended up happening is I spent more time on things like that, which made me more productive in my work day. So I was actually ended up working less hours after doing a lot of these things because I felt better, I was had more energy and I wasn't as stressed as before. So it not only helped me from a work standpoint, working less hours, but it helped in other areas too.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think people get too worked up on, because a lot of people talk about it, including me, it's about, the emotional attachment to deals, caring, being competitive. And that's important, but I think people need to make it elastic, meaning that sometimes you need to really care a lot, like a big deal at the end of the quarter that you've been working on forever, that you're competing for, versus prospecting, where, oh, somebody hung up on me or won't reply. Who cares? You just that stuff you just got to brush off. You can't get emotionally attached to each email or each phone call or each discovery call. And I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, and that's that kind of type A competitiveness so that you mentioned. And I think that's good to a certain extent because you want to have some skin in the game, especially for those bigger deals that you've been working on for 12 plus months. I mean, that can be crushing. But if you're taking everything personally, if you're dwelling on all these things that happen throughout the day or the week, I mean, you're just going to get into a downward spiral of just dwelling on the past and all this negative stuff. So yeah, I mean, don't take it personally, right? At the end of the day, no one's out there to get you. I don't think. I think there's enough out there for everybody. So just keep kind of moving forward and stay positive and don't let one big deal that you lose turn into, weeks and months of of bad things happening. Because if you start taking it personally and dwelling on the past, like there's a good chance it can go into a chain reaction of just a lot of negative behavior and more of that happening.
And I think we're kind of like the athletes of the business world. And if you think about, any sport, there's always this long recovery period and even a down season, right? Where people get the time to break away. But we don't get that. And nobody builds that in. So if everyone doesn't, I think we all have to take personal responsibility for it and build it into our lifestyle, like a morning routine or taking a walk or a run at lunch. I know if I take a walk, it's like, clears my mind up really quick.
Yeah, there's a lot of athletes that get into sales. I know it was a medical device and it was pretty notorious for having like former professional athletes. And yeah, you're right. You have to kind of create your own schedule. I know we've talked about the salespreneur thing, but you have to incorporate that rest and recovery and make it important. And a lot of us are on commission, so we can kind of make our own schedule. But hopefully you're also working for an organization that prioritizes that. I think it's definitely becoming a little bit more trendy at the moment, where they might promote some of that stuff, but you also it could not be like that. So you have to kind of just make it happen. And at the end of the day, if your numbers are good, hopefully, no one's going to be bothering you about what you're doing during the day if you're working out or doing a morning routine, what have you. So I've also like I know some people that literally first thing in the morning they'll get up and they're already like in a mad scramble, like emails and like going straight to a meeting, and they don't have any time to just get ready and like just relax a little bit. So if you're going straight into that nonstop sales environment and you're not even taking some time for yourself, you're instantly going to be stressed out for that whole day if you go straight into meetings or straight into a conference call, whatever. So I think you just got to prioritize it and don't let wherever you work dictate that. You should be doing it yourself.
That's it. Because I see just a tremendous amount of talk about it on LinkedIn and on social. And a lot of people really early in their career too. So, I mean, if the first 5 years you're feeling burnout, you, you're doing something wrong because, and maybe I shouldn't say that, but you've, because I see a lot of people later in their career, it is inevitable. I haven't really met anybody who's been doing it for 20, 30 years that hasn't hit a wall at some time, including myself many times. Because it's not just the customers and stuff, it's the internal things. Because we don't get treated like employees, we get treated like contractors and, indispensable. And since we pay you commission, we don't need to treat you as well.
Yeah, you're right. It's inevitable no matter what. I mean, I've changed industries multiple times. I've climbed the ladder in new roles and moved up quickly, and it's bound to happen. And I actually at one point I realized that it was sometimes me putting too much pressure on myself. I think a lot of these sales folks are high achievers. They want to do really well, and they're just go 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 go, and you don't even give yourself a break. And I noticed even over time I was doing it more to myself in addition to the company or whatever environment. But you also have to just be aware of yourself and like give yourself a break, because you can take some time off, like regroup a little bit. You don't have to keep pushing, like take the last 2 weeks of the year because everything's good to go. So like I found that sometimes these type A, like really high performers might actually put more pressure on themselves than anybody else, and that's part of the problem as well.
Yeah. And if you think about it long term, the ROI on it isn't very high. Because I've seen, if you do it for 20 years, it manifests itself in different ways. I've seen a lot of people have illnesses, problems relating to other people, addictions, uh, really bad health habits. And what I've found, certainly in the last 2 years, the more you do something physical, you become better at sales because the equivalents are there. You start to have the mindset, oh, it takes a while to build up my body to be able to do something. Why isn't that the same with my mind and my skill set? Instead of, we have the mental idea that once we learn something, we're good, right? But it doesn't matter if you learned how to do a push up or a sit up, you got to do them. every day, all day, to really build up. And it doesn't happen instantly. It happens in weeks and months. And usually at first, you're going backwards. You feel sore and you're doing less. And if you have that mindset, you'll start to think like, oh, well, this is why it takes a while to become great at prospecting, great at connecting with strangers, great at understanding where I am in a deal and being able to have that mental control over your emotions.
Yeah, it's those small daily improvements that over a long period of time make you successful. It's like if you work out 3 days in a row, you're not going to see the benefits from that physically, right? But if you work out 3 days in a row for 3 to 6 months, you'll probably see some progress compared to before. And it's the same thing with sales and making those getting those small wins towards the end of that deal. So I think you have to look at it like that. And yeah, I mean, quite frankly, I think at one point I looked, because I was trying to like move up and be like VP, president of sales, all this stuff. And I looked at some of the people in that industry and just kind of the lifestyle. And it was just, man, it's just so nonstop, like traveling every week, like constantly entertaining customers, and all that stuff is like fun and cool for a while. But I was like, do I really want to keep going down that path? And of course you can say no to stuff and you can delegate things out, but it when you get to those type of levels, it's tough to manage that, and you're constantly on the road, which can turn into some unhealthy things and not working out, eating unhealthy. So I kind of was like, I'd rather be a individual contributor or entrepreneur, because then I can kind of make my own schedule more, versus like climbing a ladder for a big company. Because I just see, whether it's right or wrong, but when I think of like high up salespeople at like big companies, it's easy to get stuck into that trap of like unhealthy behavior, I feel like.
And that's it. And you look at like even like sales kickoffs, what's the food they put out? It's usually, sugary Danish stuff, which, tastes good and gives you a sugar high for about 20 minutes, and then you crash. And then what does everybody do afterwards? They go out for happy hour. And, which then goes to dinner. And then people go drinking after that. And then they get to the hotel room late. Oh, but then you have to be back in the conference room at 8 a.m. It just doesn't lead itself to a healthy lifestyle at all.
Yeah, you got to get good at those Irish goodbyes. I remember like when I was younger, those people, yeah, those the people that would like leave early or disappear, and it makes total sense now. It's like they learn their lesson over the years, and yeah, for a while, I mean, I was kind of like it was sort of like a badge of honor, like being able to do all that and then post up the next day and be still present or whatever, and that's just not something you want to be doing long term, right? It's just not going to be sustainable. So yeah, I think a lot of it's cultural at the companies as well. I mean, some companies are better than others, but if they're promoting that type of stuff or not being as aware, I guess, of some of those small things, it's going to be tough to kind of build up a healthier culture.
Yeah. And I see a lot of managers, certainly at the SDR level, seeing who will survive. So they just push and push and push. And I got to tell them, I go, who's going to survive are the people that aren't emotionally attached to being successful. And they're the little drones that hit the buttons and read the scripts, but they don't connect with the other person. Sales, it's a creative process. It's bonding with another person. If you act like a robot, that's not going to happen. And to get that, that's emotional energy. And if you stamp it all out, what do you have left? Because you see a lot of salespeople today, they do the sales talk, they're willing to do the work, but they're not connecting with the other person. They don't have a personality. They're talking about motions and plays and discovery, but that's not selling. And
Oh yeah, I cringe whenever because I get hit up on LinkedIn sometimes for stuff, and it's like a discovery call. I get like an invite for that, and it says discovery in it. But yeah, I was gonna say like I think you make more sales when you're not selling, right? And that took me a while to learn that, where you're just having conversations and you're connecting with people, like learning about them, like what do they care about most? What problem are they trying to solve for their organization? If you make it all about that and them and helping them and having that kind of giving mentality, yeah, of course, at some point, obviously they know you're in sales, right? Like, but if you have that mentality, I feel like over the long term, it will pay off versus just trying to close, because you can read through that right away when someone's like desperate trying to close something and they look stressed. I mean, you probably have empathy for them and you understand. And if it's someone you've known, maybe you'll help them out. But like, you can just read right through that when someone's stressed, like trying to close something before, we're right at the end of December here. So people are scrambling to get stuff done. That's just not a good look, I guess I would say.
Well, that's it, because it comes across because they're only asking about things they care about,
Hmm.
timing, and, are you important enough for me to spend time with? And that's the opposite of selling. That's like proactive order taking when there's no order to take.
Yeah, and I've been there. I mean, it was especially when you're working in these bigger companies, like they're trying to hit numbers before the end of the year, and you have to go ask for some favors. It can be a little easier if you do have a relationship built up, but it's just not a great place to be in. It's definitely uncomfortable, and that you talk about stressing you out, like trying to do stuff like that. I mean, that will definitely do it as well.
And with burnout, I think there's a tipping point, because once you've tipped into burnout, I haven't seen many people come back. They go off and they do something else. Because there's a lot of people you see going into marketing. And I'm like shaking my head. It's like, nothing's wrong with marketing, but usually the drivers to be good in sales and like sales are the opposite of what drives someone to be good in marketing. You're money motivated, you're competitive, you like working with people, you like some variety. Marketing doesn't have a lot of that. It's much more pretty stuff, looking. I just, it doesn't attract me at all. And when I see people do it and then they start talking about sales, I don't know how anyone gives them any credibility anymore.
Yeah, it's very rare that you find someone in marketing that has like a ton of sales experience that was like out there with you doing the same
Really
thing. I mean,
doing
it
things.
almost, yeah, it almost never happens. And I would prefer 100% just working with marketing and knowing them and kind of understanding high level what they do, but I don't ever want to actually be, full time in marketing. But yeah, going back to your point, I mean, you have to, I guess, be self-awareness and really try to think about where you're at. I mean, I used to be like a yes man, I say. So I'd always say yes to everything and I would like be going above and beyond and just like pushing myself to the limits. So I became more aware of that. I know you and I have talked about being effective and efficient, or like, what are the differences there? But like, when I was saying yes to everything, I was just doing so much stuff. I was always take on more and more and more, but I wasn't necessarily focused on the things that were most important to close that deal and make money and not work as many hours. So I think, yeah, it's easier said than done. But if you can, the sooner the better that you realize stuff like that, the better it's going to help you with the stress. And then, I mean, those simple things we talked about, like morning routines, working out, sleeping. I mean, I know people that do a lot of like breath work and meditation stuff. I mean, it's basic stuff. And it doesn't have to be like you're spending 3 hours a day doing this stuff. It could even be 60 minutes or less. Like those walks, I feel like you get your best ideas when you're walking because you can actually just think and like you have clarity, you're not as stressed. So I mean, there's a lot of things to it, I think, but being aware of it and trying to act now, be proactive versus waiting till it's too late where you're just so done that you can't even fathom being in sales anymore. Or maybe you need to switch companies too. The other thing too is you could be in the wrong industry potentially.
Yeah, I think on the inside, it usually is the manager, right? Who's trying to control. And that was my biggest problem was, I knew how to sell. I was making my number and I just wanted to be left alone or help me. I don't need someone telling me about the CRM and how to format the QBR presentation. And, oh, you should work with these people more often, or you can help me train some people. And it's like, well, that's your job. Or bring me into an account, or I'm going to call in there without telling you to see what's going on. Those things drove me nuts. And I tell people, when you're looking for a job, number one thing is the manager. Does the manager work the way you like to work? Some people need a lot of hand holding, want, a coach and a drill sergeant or whatever you need. Make sure they have it and don't have what you don't want. Either the micromanagement, the KPI counting, the silly things that I see people focusing on, the daily forecast call. I've had managers call me 2 hours after I've had a forecast call, ask me the same questions again. Hey, any update on that deal? And you're just like, And what's beautiful today is that people, work from home. You can just, let it go to voicemail.
Yeah, I mean, just you talking about that right now, just going through all the different jobs I've had and the managers. And I mean, the first thing that comes out is you can instantly remember the good managers and the bad managers and that micromanage stuff. And I think hopefully you don't get micromanaged if you're crushing your number. Typically that helps you stiff arm those micromanagers. But yeah, I vividly remember the differences between those and the people that are worried about number of calls, KPIs, uh, too into the weeds and stuff. I mean, that's not any great salesperson, I don't think, wants to be around that type of stuff. So you have to pick and choose your battles there. And yeah, you're right. It's way more important than the company and the role in some cases, because you could be in a crappy company and have an awesome manager that you love and you might stay there longer. But if it's the opposite, you could be making great money, but you might dip out because you just can't stand all that microman stuff. So that's another great point. That can cause a ton of stress as well.
And especially today when there's lots of layoffs. And I would say, before you take another off, start your interview process, think through where you'd like to work next, network. But before you start, take some time to clear your head. Don't start another job when you're already feeling burnt out. Granted, you may have to, but if you can, take that time. You don't have to tell anybody, or even just, because now you can get like therapists online and stuff, especially with guys. Guys don't talk through what they're going through. They kind of swallow it, ignore it until it's too late. And I think they need, to talk to people who just will hear them. And if you can't do that, like I do like a daily journal into Otter, the online AI to text thing, just to keep track of my progress, what's going on. And what I find is just verbalizing what I'm going through helps me just clear my head. And you don't, nobody has to know. It doesn't cost anything. It's private, but it clears my head. And all of a sudden I get that feeling that you get where you just, big 100 pounds off your back.
Yeah, you made some great points there. And I've made that mistake of changing roles in companies right away and not giving myself a full break. And that can definitely wear you out. But it depends on your situation, right? If you're struggling right now and need the financial commitments, you might have to do what you have to do. But like looking back, I didn't have to do some of the stuff I did, and I just did it that way for whatever reason. I think because I was just always trying to be a high achiever. But yeah, you got to give yourself a break. Don't go. Give yourself a few weeks to kind of just regroup and refresh. Don't do anything. And then yeah, you're right. I mean, we could have a whole nother conversation about the whole male and stigma there, but for whatever reason, men, especially in sales, because they're very probably successful, high performers, they don't want to talk about stuff like this, or it's very taboo to talk about it. But I found the more you talk about it, whether it's a journal or maybe you want to do it publicly or therapy, whatever it may be, like it just helps you kind of get it out there and move forward. So that's something for me that's helped a lot. And I actually, kind of what I'm doing now, I sort of advocate for that a little bit on just I think salespeople in general, and especially men in sales, like need to talk about this stuff more.
And that's it. And if you find yourself, using food or, any substance to kind of level yourself off, because I got into that trap where you have a mediocre company with a terrible manager. You just started, so you can't really switch. And I find myself, I get up, I'm getting myself excited with coffee, drinking coffee all through the day, not eating well, not working out. And then, happy hour, going out to dinner, eating not good stuff, not working out. And it's just a downward spiral. You get fat, right? The fatter you get, the less you move, the less good you feel, the more you eat, the more you drink. And all of a sudden, a year, 2 years later, you're like, what the hell happened? I think a lot of people during the pandemic felt that because no one was moving. Everyone was kind of replacing activity with eating and sitting and watching TV. And, 2 months of that, and all of a sudden you get a wake up call.
Yeah, it can be easy to get stuck in those traps for sure, like the coffee, the alcohol, the eating, the traveling. I mean, it's just all like a perfect storm. And then the stress that you already have from like the day-to-day job. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just you have to kind of put a line in the sand, right? I remember I felt like obligated to do all that stuff, especially if you're earlier on in a company, you do feel obligated to do a lot of that stuff. But over time, definitely try to like kind of put a line in the sand a little bit with your manager or whoever, or you can still go. I knew people, some companies that they didn't drink and they would still like they figured out a way to like still be gregarious and hang out and meet customers. And they didn't have to be like life of the party the whole time. They could still talk to everybody and then they would leave before 10 or whatever. So I mean, there's ways around it. You just have to kind of learn that over time, and you have to be kind of, I think, proactive with that at the beginning versus getting sucked into that trap.
And that's it. And I even had a rep on the podcast who said he didn't feel like he fit in or was accepted, or his career was limited because he didn't drink. And after the interview, I go, I got to tell you a secret. No one cares. No, not that you don't drink, but nobody cares that at the event you're not drinking. People might offer you a beer or something, but do they care if you drink it or not? I don't think so. All they care
Yeah.
about is themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're worried about that much, just tell them to put a soda and put a lime and a lemon in there so it looks like
Nobody
it's a
knows.
vodka. Yeah, nobody knows. And that's, yeah, a lot of it's probably a mindset thing, is like you have to kind of have that growth mindset, which is another conversation about not worrying what other people think. I think if you're constantly worried what other people think, and you're going to get sucked into this stress and trying to please others, you have to kind of just not worry what other people think.
Yeah. I mean, and also giving meaning to certain things. And I think this goes to the emotional elasticity. Like if somebody hangs up on you, it doesn't mean that you suck. Who knows what it means? It might mean that they had a bad day, or it was the fifth call they got, or they were not interested. Whatever, doesn't matter. I think too many people look at it as like the end of the world, because that's what it means to our little reptilian brain. It means I'm better than you. That's kind of, and if you give that the proper meaning, or that is the meaning for you, that hurts. I remember the first time someone hung up on me, I had to go for a 5 mile run, because that it meant it hurt, but that was my fault, not theirs.
Yeah, I don't take it personally. I mean, you know what you're getting into in sales. It's not going to be easy. That's why there's opportunity to make some, C-level, C-suite level type money. So you know what you're getting into. It's not going to be for the faint of heart, and you're going to get told no a lot more than you get told yes. So you just have to kind of get that thick skin and not take it personally. And yeah, hey, just think about like maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they just got hit up by 25 sales reps in the past 3 days. You have no idea what's going on with them and why they did that, and maybe take a different approach next time, or stop making 100 calls a day is probably the best one. But
Yeah. And my final thing is, if you make your days into habits, prospect and whatever it is, where you use your calendar of the day pretty consistently, it really reduces the stress and the thinking that you have to go through. And if you document your process, not to the script level, but a framework and outline, you kind of know where you are and what you have to do. And it takes away a lot of that pressure from you. And it turns into, like, your morning routine turns into your prospecting routine, your pipeline routine, all of that without, everybody tends to drop everything, do something, then drop that, do something else. The context switching isn't really good as far as burnout. That is what gives you burnout. The routine gives you the confidence and reliability of what the day looks like.
100%. I mean, when I do the morning routine, I purposely don't look at my phone. So that first like hour or so, I'm just doing what I'm doing, and I'm not paying attention to my phone, looking at email or anything like that. I also map out my day and my week, right? So I literally write by the hour I just do a piece of paper of what I want to get accomplished that day. And that's what I try to stick to. Of course, sometimes you get distracted, right? But like if you're focused on that hour on prospecting or LinkedIn or your morning routine, you kind of check through that throughout the day. And those healthy habits bring more healthy habits, right? So the morning routine, the working out, meditation, you start doing a lot of that stuff, and the next you know, you're reading books for an hour a day. You're doing all this other stuff versus if you're waking up, going straight to a meeting or a call and you're stressed out, that's going to lead to more stressful things. So you have to like it takes time, right? It goes back to that. It's going to take some time, but those daily wins will turn into long-term wins, and it definitely helps with stress for sure.